France, the country that has long captivated the world with its elegance, culture, and charm, is often seen as a place where sophistication meets history. It's a land of romance, home to some of the world's greatest art, fashion, and culinary traditions. From the elegance of the Champs-Élysées to the sun-drenched lavender fields of Provence, France projects an image of refined beauty, cosmopolitan flair, and a way of life envied globally. This is a nation that prides itself on the ideals of liberté, égalité, fraternité, and its strong stance on human rights, social justice, and progressive values. Yet beneath this polished and luxurious exterior lies a complex and multifaceted society grappling with deep social, political, and economic challenges. France is a country at a crossroads, torn between its rich traditions and a rapidly changing world that constantly challenges its ideals and social cohesion. A significant piece of France's troubled history is its colonial past, a legacy that continues to haunt the country today. At the height of its empire, France controlled vast territories in Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Caribbean, bringing wealth and power to the nation but leaving deep scars on the people it colonized. While France celebrates its revolutionary roots and the principles of freedom and equality that underpin its national identity, the darker reality of colonial exploitation, racism, and oppression casts a long shadow over contemporary French society. Decolonization in the mid-20th century did not end the connection between France and its former colonies, as many people from these regions migrated to the French mainland, seeking opportunities in the country that had once ruled over them. Today, many French citizens are of North African, West African, or Caribbean descent, and their presence in France has stirred debates about what it means to be French and how to integrate diverse cultures into the fabric of the nation. These communities often face systemic discrimination, economic marginalization, and social exclusion, particularly in the banlieues, the working-class suburbs that ring major cities like Paris, Marseille, and Lyon. The banlieues have become symbols of social and economic inequality, home to dense populations struggling with unemployment, poverty, and limited access to education and social services. Here, the French ideals of equality seem far removed, as residents often face discrimination in the job market, racial profiling by police, and a lack of representation in mainstream society. The 2005 riots, which erupted after the deaths of two teenagers fleeing from police, laid bare the anger and frustration that had been simmering for years, highlighting the deep divides between the banlieue and the rest of France. These riots, which spread across the country, were not just a reaction to a single event, but an explosion of discontent over years of neglect, perceived discrimination, and lack of opportunity. The issue of race and identity in France is further complicated by laïcité, the French principle of secularism. Laïcité is deeply ingrained in French culture, dating back to the early 20th century, when the country sought to separate the Catholic Church from the state to ensure a neutral public space free from religious influence. This principle, while intended to foster a cohesive and equal society, has in recent decades become a source of controversy and debate, particularly concerning France's Muslim population. Laïcité has led to laws that restrict the display of religious symbols in public spaces, such as the headscarf ban in schools and the prohibition of face-covering veils like the burqa in public. These laws have sparked fierce debates over religious freedom, women's rights, and national identity. While supporters argue that these measures uphold the values of secularism and gender equality, critics claim that they disproportionately target Muslims, forcing them to choose between their faith and their right to participate fully in society. The tension over laïcité often flares up during moments of national crisis, particularly in the wake of terrorist attacks. The 2015 Charlie Hebdo shooting, the Bataclan massacre, and other terror-related incidents have stoked fear and suspicion, leading to increased security measures and heightened public debates about integration, extremism, and the place of Islam in French society. These events have not only shaken the nation, but have also fed into a broader narrative that paints Muslim communities as a problem that needs to be managed, fueling Islamophobia and policies that critics argue infringe upon religious freedoms and human rights. Beyond these social tensions, France has faced waves of social unrest that have tested its political and economic systems. One of the most significant movements in recent history has been the Gilets jaunes, or Yellow Vest movement, a grassroots protest that began in 2018 and quickly grew into one of the most sustained and wide-reaching demonstrations in modern French history. Originally sparked by a proposed fuel tax aimed at addressing climate change, the Yellow Vest movement rapidly transformed into a broader expression of anger against economic inequality, rising living costs, and what protesters perceived as the out-of-touch policies of President Emmanuel Macron's government. Protesters from rural areas, small towns, and working-class suburbs took to the streets, donning high-visibility yellow vests, blocking roads and occupying public spaces. Their grievances were not just economic, but also deeply political, centered on the growing disconnect between the government and ordinary citizens, particularly those outside the wealthier urban centers. The Yellow Vest movement exposed a deep divide between urban and rural France, between the globalized elite and those who feel left behind by economic policies that seem to benefit only the wealthy. Scenes of violent confrontations between protesters and police, property damage in major cities, and sustained weekly demonstrations drew global attention, highlighting a growing sense of discontent and disillusionment with traditional politics. It also underscored the fragility of social cohesion in a country that, despite its wealth, continues to grapple with inequality and a sense of division between different segments of society. France's political landscape has also been shaped by a series of high-profile scandals and controversies that have eroded public trust in government institutions. Corruption, bribery, and abuse of power are not uncommon in French politics, with numerous politicians, up to the highest offices of the presidency, being implicated in unethical behavior. The conviction of former President Nicolas Sarkozy in 2021 for corruption and influence peddling was a major shock to the nation, as he became the first French president in decades to receive a prison sentence, though he remains free pending appeal. But Sarkozy is just one example. Former President Jacques Chirac, several government ministers, and numerous business leaders have faced similar allegations, contributing to a climate of cynicism and distrust. These scandals have far-reaching implications, undermining the legitimacy of the political elite and fostering a sense that the rules are different for those in power compared to ordinary citizens. Economically, France is one of Europe's largest and most influential economies, but it faces significant challenges that cast a shadow over its future. While it boasts a generous social welfare system and a high standard of living, the French economy struggles with persistent issues like high unemployment, particularly among young people, and a labor market that is slow to adapt to modern demands. The French labor code, the Code du Travail, is known for its complexity and rigidity, providing workers with strong protections, but also making it difficult for businesses to hire, fire, or make necessary adjustments in the workforce. This has led to slow job growth and a disconnect between the skills needed by employers and the qualifications of job seekers. Youth unemployment remains stubbornly high, leaving many young people feeling disenchanted and uncertain about their futures. Reforms to modernize the labor market have often met resistance, particularly from labor unions that wield significant power in France. Strikes and demonstrations are a regular part of life, with workers taking to the streets to protest changes to pensions, working conditions, or benefits, leading to disruptions in public services and the economy. The challenges of migration and integration are also deeply felt in France. The country has long been a destination for migrants and refugees seeking asylum or better economic opportunities, but the reality of life for many newcomers is fraught with difficulty. While the government has taken steps to dismantle makeshift camps like the infamous jungle near Calais, many migrants and asylum seekers continue to live in precarious conditions, facing homelessness, limited access to social services, and police crackdowns. The asylum process in France is lengthy and often complicated, leaving many applicants in a state of limbo for months or even years. Meanwhile, anti-immigrant rhetoric has gained traction, particularly from far-right political parties like Marine Le Pen's National Rally, which has influenced public opinion and created a more hostile environment for migrants. Environmental concerns are another area where France faces both opportunities and challenges. The country was a leader in hosting the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015, setting ambitious goals for reducing carbon emissions and promoting sustainability. However, the reality of meeting these targets is complicated by France's heavy reliance on nuclear energy, which, while low carbon, raises concerns about waste disposal, plant safety, and long-term sustainability. France also struggles with air pollution, particularly in major cities like Paris, where smog and traffic congestion pose health risks. The country's agricultural sector, though a major economic contributor, faces criticism for its extensive use of pesticides and intensive farming practices, which have led to soil degradation, water pollution, and biodiversity loss. Efforts to address these environmental challenges often come into conflict with economic interests, leading to debates about how to balance growth with sustainability. Socially, France has made strides in gender equality, but disparities persist, particularly in the workplace. The gender pay gap remains a reality, with women earning less than men on average, and women are still underrepresented in leadership positions across business and politics. Perhaps even more troubling is the issue of domestic violence and femicide, with France reporting some of the highest rates of domestic violence in Europe. Despite government initiatives to combat this issue, survivors of domestic violence often face insufficient support, and perpetrators are not always held accountable. Activists have called for stronger legal protections, better public education, and more comprehensive services for victims, arguing that more needs to be done to address the deeply rooted cultural and social factors that contribute to gender-based violence. The rise in Islamophobia and anti-Semitism in recent years has also become a major concern in France. Hate crimes against Muslim and Jewish communities have increased, marked by harassment, vandalism, and violence. Incidents like the desecration of Jewish cemeteries, threats against mosques, and anti-Semitic attacks have raised alarms about the safety of minority communities and the ability of the government to protect them. The stigmatization of Islam, in particular, has been fueled by debates over national security, religious freedom, and the place of Islam in French society, leading to policies and public discourse that often blur the line between addressing extremism and targeting religious practice. All of these issues point to a country in transition, a nation that is proud of its cultural heritage, its values, and its global influence, but one that also faces deep internal struggles and contradictions. France remains a land of contrasts, where the beauty and elegance of its culture sit side by side with economic struggles, social tensions, and political controversies. It's a nation constantly evolving, reflecting both its storied past and its hopes and uncertainties for the future. And while the darker side of France is not always visible to the outside world, it is very much a part of the story of a country that is always seeking to reconcile its identity with the realities of a changing world.